Welcome to The Cross in the Classroom, Educating with Eternal Values, the podcast where faith and education come together. Join us every 2 weeks as we connect with the inspiring voices of Valor Christian High School, teachers, students, and leaders, sharing stories of growth, purpose, and the eternal values that guide our community. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to this special roundtable episode. Today we are joined by an amazing group of history teachers as they dig into 250 years of America, reflecting on what drew them into teaching. They share thoughts on what the founders got right and what they left unfinished, what gives us hope for the next 250 years, and what it really means to be an informed citizen right now. They also swap stories about the power of teaching history from a faith perspective. And we should mention, this is the last podcast of this semester. We hope you've enjoyed the season. We have a new set of topics and guests for next school year. If you enjoy the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and visit valorchristian.com for more information and resources. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I am joined by an incredible panel of history podcasters today, and we're very excited to dig into 250 years of America together, hopefully have a little bit of fun and answer some questions along the way. So coming from unique perspectives of law and military history and economics and AP and dual credit curriculums, could you guys do a quick introduction of yourselves, what classes you teach, and maybe the one thing that kind of pulled you to this content?
I am Jeff Culver. I teach AP Macroeconomics, AP Microeconomics, AP US.
It's a light load.
It's a light load. It's so fascinating. I think what pulled me to it is the interest of the disciplines. I just love all of this content. I think it's fascinating. It's endlessly delightful. So delight and fascination is what pulled me in. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Courtney Short, and I teach US and World in the West. And what has drawn me into that is not only the global perspectives you get with World of the West, but the fact that the history is also where we come from, and there's that link that happens there with the curriculum.
I love that. Thank you.
I'm Sarah Edson, and I teach U.S. government, dual credit U.S. government, and intro to law. And for me, it's the applicability of our content. I love to tell students that the beautiful thing is that we get to look outside our four walls of the classroom and see how everything we talk about actually plays out. That's why I love what I do.
Love it. I think, too, we all probably have a specific moment or a class or even a topic. So Beth Hutchison, history chair, I've been fortunate enough to be here for 18 years and have watched the school grow in incredible ways. And I would say one of the things that I love the most is that our department has really refined our curriculum. And over the last 18 years, we have taken really great ideas and made them better, and changed a little bit with the culture, but continued to hold fast to the demands of a scripturally based education. But my love of history actually comes back to a specific class in college. I went in, Jeff will appreciate this, thinking that I was going to be a science teacher. I grew up on a ranch and I worked for a vet and I love biology. And then I took chemistry, and then everyone's minds need to play don't, right? It was not good. Barely passed the class. I am not a D student, having an absolute intellectual meltdown. And the very next class that I took at Colorado College was a class called Hitler, period. And it was unknown to me by this absolute icon of history education, Dr. Dennis Showalter. And I just remember thinking in that class that something that I had always thought was a little bit interesting. I took AP US history in high school. But in that moment, I saw all of these, quote, dead dudes and dates absolutely come alive. And one of the things that I love the most now about teaching history is that you can make something from 1776 feel very relevant today. So that was when I switched from a biology, no thank you to chemistry major, and became a history major. And thought I wanted to work in a museum for a while, but discovered I like people way too much to just deal with artifacts. Cool, but boring. And so here I am, and Valor keeps welcoming me back. So, Jeff, do you have a moment or a book or a person or...
Yeah, I came to history pretty roundabout. And so like getting the job to teach U.S. history, I've always been interested in history. And I was trying to think like what spiked it a bit. Probably a lot of D-Day reading, the Stephen Ambrose books, Citizen Soldiers, and just straight up D-Day. So kind of the military history route, but then as you go further, I just realized that there's so much content, and I think the more you learn, the more interesting it becomes, and that's been my experience for every topic. The kids are like, "What's your favorite topic?" Whatever I'm teaching at the moment, right? It's so interesting. So Stephen Ambrose and military history, I guess, but it's all good.
So for me, what really drew me in is my love of history goes back to when I was a really little kid. My family would always go to historic sites and things like that. And we do the special days when you could dress up, and do the one-room schoolhouse and things like this. And my dad, huge history buff, took me to see the Gettysburg battlefield when he drove me to college. And I loved APUSH. I loved AP US history. My teacher was amazing, Mr. Hoke. I remember him to this day. But I think a really formative moment was actually when I was in high school. I was 16, and my choir had been commissioned by the French government to sing at the liberation of France. Oh, wow. So yes, that means that's 1994 for those of you doing the math at home. And we sang we visited a bunch of countries in Europe, France and Germany and Italy, and went through Switzerland because it's in the middle. And we would sing at these, big locations. And I really remember singing at Normandy Beach in front of the Garden of the Missing, which is this huge monument to that, and having the French citizens get all weepy. And we were singing these Americana ballads and things. And there my 16-year-old mind was like, wow, look at the impact that, what Americans have done in the past is having in the present, in a foreign country, in a different place. And it was at that point that I saw that history had relevance for the present and really impacted your life. So
I think for me, it not as eloquent and beautiful of a story as the beaches of Normandy, but I vividly remember, I'd always been intrigued by history kind of growing up, but I remember vividly 8th grade. That's when we studied kind of U.S. history and elementary school social studies. And I was fascinated by it. I just found it interesting. And then we had the fortune as a family to travel to Boston. And so I was in Boston for about a week while I'm studying kind of Revolutionary War history. And I remember kind of walking the Freedom Trail and going to Bunker Hill and going to the spot where the Boston Massacre happened, and seeing that old cobblestone. And the realization that it was, oh my gosh, those are real people who walked right there.
Totally.
Who went up Bunker Hill, having all of those become real and seeing the real houses they lived in. And it's at that point, kind of to yours, Beth, it was no longer dead dudes and dates, but these were real human beings who had real experiences and real lives. And that's what I've loved about history. It's a story of people. And that's what's so cool about it, is you can make it relevant to anyone because it's just human beings living their life, not trying to do anything memorable necessarily, but rather becoming memorable by living an ordinary life. And that's just relatable and cool. That's why I love it. It's fun.
I love how so many of our stories were all when we were very young. When we were kids, when we were students, when we were in that learning point in our lives.
And hopefully if we're doing a good job every day, the kids even, I always joke with them, even if you don't love history by the time you leave our classes, because it's not for everybody, as long as they're interested, there's something that piques interest, allows them to make a momentary intellectual connection with someone, or even if they can see someone's heart in a sacrifice or a decision, because history is chock full of the really tough moments, which now get to become some of the things that we're going to talk about. So, Jeff, would you mind tackling for us a At the founding, the founding fathers kind of threw a whole bunch of stuff together. And I always crack jokes about they were locked in Independence Hall with no deodorant and no Colgate toothpaste and woolen suits and, the literal and metaphorical weight of an entire new country on their shoulders.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who paints that lovely image for students. I'm like, can you just imagine? Like, do you just want to be a fly on that wall?
Right.
No, because it's going to be so gross.
So gross.
And sweaty.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If we could just be
remember
grateful for deodorant at this moment.
Right.
Absolutely. But Jeff, if you would share with us for a minute, if you think maybe at the founding, something that they left unfinished and whether, maybe even share if you think that was intentional or unintentional. All of us sitting here probably aren't going to know what it's going to look like in 30 years, but to think 250 years ago when they put all of these grand ideas together.
Yeah. There's an essay, what they call it an APUSH, a short answer question, SAQ, that we give to the students, and it has John Adams and it has Benjamin Rush. And John Adams says, hey, look, the American Revolution wasn't the war. The revolution happened before the war even started, and the revolution was in the hearts and minds of the people. And then Benjamin Rush and he's writing that to Jefferson. And Benjamin Rush he says, the war isn't the revolution. The revolution is now after the war. We're in the first great act. The war was just the first great act. And now it remains to perfect our government, to perfect, he says, like the manners and the morals of our citizens. And so right away they know they're part of a larger story. And they are trying to put together the foundations for this new democracy, this new Enlightenment form of government that really hasn't been seen before in history, and they know it's going to take some time. The classic slavery example, they know that there's things that they know they're going to have to deal with later, and if they deal with it now, the country is going to fall apart before it even begins.
Sure.
And I think those are such hard decisions, and it's easy to dismiss. It's easy to criticize people of history from our perspective, but they know that it's a work in progress right away. So the slavery element is kind of the obvious piece, but they just think, okay, we got to figure out how to run this country with a democracy, and what does democracy mean? What does equality mean? What does freedom mean? And all of those were in progress. So they are aware that it's not even close to finished, right? It's just at the very beginning.
I think one of the most beautiful things is even that they write the articles and then they gather everyone around again and they go, oops, rough draft. There are a couple pages of this, buddy, that we can keep, but the rest of it we've got to scrap.
Garbage.
It's one of my favorite things that Sarah and I get to teach in Gov is to point to a moment where we didn't quite get it right. Like we had a couple good ideas, but Jeff, I love that you brought up that we were not collectively using the word democracy globally. So what does that even mean, and how can a group of people try to define it? Thank you. Sarah, if you could pick one founding document or moment, person even, that best describes the founding of our country, who would it be and why, or what would it be?
So for me, it's a document. And I don't say this to be cliche or trite, but it builds beautifully on Jeff's of the Constitution, because I feel like it is a imperfectly perfect document.
Beautiful.
In its recognition of the humanity who is going to have to execute this thing, that they didn't know what they were doing. So I love that it's this combination of confidence. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, we're going to do this right. We're going to be so good. And it's kind of an in-your-face to King George in England. We've got this. We're so much better. So there's that confidence. But yet if you go through the document, particularly into Article 5, the process of amendments of we're so good, but we also know we may not be good forever. And this may not work exactly as we had intended. Because, we realized from the Articles of Confederation, we got that a little wrong. I always like to explain it to students we swing the pendulum way too far with the Articles. And so the Constitution becomes this middle ground of good, bad, but also some flexibility that they didn't have under Parliament. They didn't have with the Articles. But at the same time, too, it's flawed because it's a bundle of compromises. And I always love that expression and that descriptor for the Constitution. It's not a perfect document because it can't be. You already had, very distinct groups and passions and interests. Regionalism was real. The economies were so different. And you got to figure out, how do we bring everybody together who really had no common identity until 1776. That's the first time they are referred to really collectively as patriots or Americans. And they've got to find some common identity some way, somehow. And it's through this document. It's through the Constitution. And the fact that we still are governed by it to this day. It's only been amended 27 times.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn cool. And it is open to interpretation and different views and flexibility and rigidity when it needs to be that way. It's a beautiful, imperfect document.
Absolutely. Kind of like humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah. Especially
I think it
after the
reflects
fall.
the humanity of the time and of today.
Absolutely.
It's weird that the lawyer likes the Constitution.
I know.
The non-lawyer also really loves it. And Courtney, kind of also to our listeners, we did not practice all of these ahead of time, but this is working pretty great for us. Courtney, could you tell us, based off of all of this too, what you think the founders got most right?
Oh, for sure. So, and I agree with a lot of what you said, the flexibility of the Constitution and all of that. But to build off that idea of flexibility and moving away from being very, very rigid and understanding mistakes can be made and humans will be flawed and that type of perfection doesn't exist. I would say that they got right is the balance of powers. Because the balance of powers with that check on the three branches of government really make sure that you don't have any one body that is going to get carried away in another direction or get too much power or, do something to knock over, the foundations that they were building, the democracy that they were building, that you're able to do this brand new experiment and have something in place there to keep the flaws of mankind in check systematically. And I think that balance of powers is what allows our ideals and that the government is made and designed to protect to be continued to be protected.
I love that. Balance of powers, I'm sure, was also something that 250 years ago absolutely rocked the world. I think that there were maybe some smaller countries that had the dream of possibly being able to have something that we now call a democracy. But I just picture the monarchies of the world back in the late 1700s going, did you guys hear what that United States of America is going to try to pull off? Ha ha. To put the power in the hands of everyday citizens elected or called to different positions, it was definitely groundbreaking at its time and incredible, all of the different other democracies that have kind of mirrored themselves off of hopefully some of the things we've gotten right. So awesome.
Yeah, I kind of love their terrifiedness of power, right?
Right.
Like at least the concentration of power. They're just like, please, no. We got to spread this out. It's dangerous. It corrupts.
Well, and even so beautiful that then George Washington steps down, like the guy who could have held the power for as long as he
lived.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, nope, 2 terms and I'm out. And I'm going to try to set a precedent. Lasted for a while.
But I also think it's something that's so important for students to understand that that's one of the things that makes governance so complicated nowadays is that we were so terrified of a concentration of power. So, Madison writes about it beautifully in Federalist Number 10. He's like, spread it all out. Like, don't give anyone. But at the same time, that makes change difficult. It makes it difficult to govern because no one group can do everything.
Right.
You might see a problem, but it may not be, you have to get a lot of different groups to all go in on it together. Nothing's going to be an easy fix. And so governance is always going to be incredibly messy because we don't want any one person or group to have too much of it, too much of that power.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was really fun. How about we'll shift to kind of another set of questions. Courtney, could we come back to you? Even spin in some of your previous training and stuff, but what gives you hope for the future of our country looking 2026 ahead to the next 250 years? Is there something that gives you an extra measure of hope?
Yeah, so I think I've seen that in the classrooms that I've been at. I taught at the academies, United States Military Academy at West Point and the Air Force Academy here in lovely Colorado. And I saw selfless service there with those cadets who were deciding at a very young age that they were committing themselves to the ideals of the country through service. But I also very much see that in our students here at Valor too, that they are absolutely dedicated to selfless service. And it's something you see here at Valor, and you see in the community, and you see in the classroom. And they just have a larger view of things. And I've seen too in their interaction in the classroom and how they, confront the material and things, that they're the critical thinkers that absolutely give me hope for the future as that next generation.
I love that. I have always been very inspired by the number of our kids who Valor has a requirement for the amount of service hours that all of our students end up finishing by the time that they graduate. But if I think we were to look collectively at the number of kids who go above and beyond, or even selflessly serve in so many times that maybe aren't recorded on their student transcript records and stuff, the fact that our kids even thank us every single day when they walk out of the classroom. Thank you for giving me that test touch. Hey, you're welcome. No problem. Check with me tomorrow when you get the grade back. So thank you for sharing that, Courtney, especially being newer to the faculty. I'm glad that we're holding up to what I would always hope that our kids are reflecting back out into the world.
For sure.
Awesome.
I think they definitely, every day in the classroom, I'm blown away by how they engage with the material and ask the why and dig into the deeper of the meaning of it. And I do think that with curriculum like history, there's a very real direct connection to present day and how that impacts us tomorrow and into the future. So it's important that they know that and that they're understanding it on a deeper level and wrestling with it too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's super easy to complain about the youth, right? And I do feel like it's this generational, like every generation back to Plato, like has to say, oh, the kids these days, right? But the kids are all right. Like they're going to be okay. And all the things you pointed out, like we've got a good crew at Valor and nationwide,
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, would you tackle love the segue, thank you. Why should a kid in 2026 care about 1776?
So it's kind of a question, just like why bother with history at all, right? So one of my favorite writers, David Foster Wallace, he has given this famous address, maybe it was 2005 at Kenyon College, and he tells the story of this older fish swimming through the water, and these two little fish encounter the older fish, and the fish goes, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the fish keep swimming, and one fish looks over at the other fish and he goes, "What the heck is water?" And I think that's what history is about, learning the water you're in. And the way you learn about the water that you're in is by looking at other experiences before. And so I often compare it to travel. Like if you like to travel, you're seeing other cultures and you're seeing other peoples. And what's history is just traveling, but it's in time, right? And so you're learning that the way we are is not the way it had to be, that there's contingencies, that it didn't have to go this way, that people make choices that matter, that people make choices that are consequential, that accidents happen. And as a Christian, you also, I think, seeing the providence of God, the human limitations of knowledge and what we don't know. It always blows my mind that in 1775, the Americans are trying to make peace with King George, and a year later, we're in a Revolutionary War, right? You just don't know what's coming. You just have no idea what's coming. So to learn the water that we're in. We got here from somewhere. The way things are in 2026 didn't have to be that way. And so learning about 1776, especially in the 250th anniversary, is kind of one of the keys to getting out of your own time period, getting out of your own bubble, really. You can go travel or you can dive into history books.
And with the cost of gas these days, it might be less expensive to buy a book.
Bingo.
So true. If I could just kind of dovetail on the travel and history too, I think I've kind of noticed in my own life too, when I go to other places, just other places in the nation and internationally, the more I know about where I'm at, the deeper experience I have and the richer it is. So there is a piece of like, if you're going to, plan a trip to France, it would be good to know a little about the French revolutions. When you're standing in these places, you can be in awe of what they really, really are.
Yep.
And that goes for our places too. That if you know the history of your own, nation, when you go to Massachusetts and Boston and everything you mentioned, like these are incredible experiences, but you need to have that knowledge to realize what you're seeing. And I think that that's another way in which history can just make your life and your life experience so much richer.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Sarah, we'll shift gears a little bit. Can you share with us what you think it means to be an informed citizen today? Because that's probably an important element of 2026 valuing 1776.
Absolutely. And it's also, for the government teacher, things I do and why I do it. For me, I think being an informed citizen means you have a willingness to engage. I think that's an engaging in asking questions. I think it's engaging with people, with media, with different ideas, with different concepts. And when you engage and you do ask the questions, I think there's also a component of genuine listening. And I think that's one struggle in this day and age that we have is oftentimes we listen to respond, to react, to defend. So for me, being an informed citizen is I'm listening to understand. Not because I'm necessarily going to change. I don't have to change my point of view. I don't have to change my opinion. But I want to listen to understand. And for me, that's the informed citizen is I'm not engaging to change my mind or necessarily to change other people's minds, but I'm engaging to value other people. I'm engaging to value other perspectives, other stories, because we all have our reasons for why we do what we do and why we think what we think. And if we just understand or try to understand, be willing to understand, that's an informed citizen. And then if they go act on that, great. Whether
Absolutely.
That's voting, serving on a jury, running for politics. I mean, whatever it may be, just being a committed citizen, sitting on your school board or simply just attending a school board meeting.
Yes.
I remember the first time taking our kids, or just recently we took our kids to a school board meeting. I'd never been to one. My husband had never been to one. Our children had never been to one. Yeah. And it was so fascinating just to see the citizenry engaging in conversation and at the most local level.
Yeah.
That's not in everybody's cards. I get it. But just having a willingness to open up your eyes and your ears and then plug in where it works, because it's not going to be the same for everyone. So that's what I think for an informed citizen. You don't have to know it all. In fact, don't know it all. Please.
Yeah.
Ask the questions.
I love that. The book of James says, be quick to hear, slow to speak. Like, why don't you listen before you make your judgments? I think it's a way to love your enemies or your neighbors, right? By listening carefully and even maybe putting the best spin on what they say. Like the word straw manning, right, is to make a caricature. But I think steel manning is a way to like, hey, what's the best version of this? And I think it respects the dignity of the other person. So yeah, if more citizens could be like you, that would be amazing.
Not like me, just like my little head thinks they should be. That's
The idealized self.
do as I think, not necessarily as I do. But it's also just to a practical side. Students in government always ask, when are we going to debate? I don't like debates. Debate has a purpose, but in that particular classroom, I don't want them retorting. If we're going to have conversation, I want it to be just that. I want it to be a conversation and a discussion. And I don't want anyone to feel like they have to one up the other person. I want them to have that freedom of, I'm going to listen just to listen, not because my grade depends on me giving you some retort back, some really smart, wicked comeback, but rather, oh, wait, let me settle with that. Let me, have that percolate a little bit. And what do I do with that? Let me wrestle with it. Wrestle.
Say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what a thought.
Right.
I don't know yet.
I remember my AP US history teacher in high school. There was some question that was asked, and it was one of those thoughtful moments. And, you think really highly of your teachers, and we do not know it all. We just let them all know. But I just remember watching Miss Gus go, you know what? I don't know. Can I get back to you tomorrow? And it not only rocked my world in the moment, because I thought it was that dawning realization of we can't always know everything, but she did. She came back the very next day and addressed in front of the class. Of course, now I forget what the topic was, but
And she couldn't Google it.
she
She
couldn't
probably
Google
had to
it.
look it up in a book.
Guys,
Not then.
Library?
what? There were these real things called encyclopedias that you had to open and read the pages. Alphabetical order is a very real thing, So, yeah. But powerful moments, absolutely. It's a little bit off script, but I think one of the most beautiful and incredible things that we get to do is that we get to teach all of our different history classes from the perspective of faith. Do you guys have maybe a moment or a topic that you'd be willing to share where being able to connect us as believers, being able to reflect on people and events and citizens and cultures, where maybe being able to lean back on biblical truth has either given you a grounding or maybe even that extra layer to be able to challenge our kids to be really great citizens and to take 1776 and move it forward?
I can start just because it does kind of frame, it's how we start a lot of our government classes here, is explaining that, I'm not going to have answers for everything. I'm not going to have solutions. And a lot of students will ask, well, why did this happen? And my really quick response is because they could. A person they could do this. They could make this bad decision. And we can't expect perfection from human beings, even if they are in government positions, even if they are elected officials. And I like to pull out my Bible and say, look, God created a perfect world, a perfect universe. And that thing fell apart in less than 3 pages of the Bible. How do we expect 250 years of history to not have a little messiness here and there? It's because it's human nature. And I'm so grateful that we get to constantly have that lens. Any topic we're talking about, we get to go back to that place of God doesn't expect perfection. He gave us free will for a reason. He knew we were going to mess it up, but he gave it to us anyways. So just understand that. Like, we don't have to put logic to everything.
Yeah.
It's free will, and it's going to get messy.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And talking about here for America 250 and the founding and the documents, we are a nation that is founded on Christian principles. So particularly in teaching U.S. history, those principles are tried and challenged and lifted up and expanded, and they go wonderfully, and then flawed humans morph them in other ways, and it ends up as it is a thread throughout the curriculum. And I don't think you can separate that in understanding the American story when you think about how that American story began and who we are as Americans and how that has been built to so many layers and how we interact with each other as people. So I see that kind of come in the classroom when you can ask the students challenging questions about how we, as Americans, as Christians, how we have tackled some things in the past, and what does that mean about how we should react to things and tackle things in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. What's always interesting to me in U.S. history, and I'm sure any sort of world history, is kind of the use and misuse of religion. And so one thing I'll sometimes will look at is the sermons that were preached before the American Revolution, either in support or against it, and then also the sermons that were preached before the Civil War in the South and in the North. And speaking of the role of power and the role of like sacralizing the political and what it does when you get religion behind, like kind of on your side and marshaling that. So I feel like it's a good way to step back, out of the present to see, okay, my students are often it makes sense. Like, yeah, the South is supporting slavery with the Bible, but then to read their arguments, you're like, and this is in the water. This is what everybody thought. And so it's really fascinating to see the use and misuse of Christianity and how it's co-opted or instrumentalized for ill purposes. So that's what fascinates me about part of the teaching.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I think for me, and I can't remember exactly which election it was, feels like every one of them is combative for very different reasons, right? So the
most important election of our time.
Every single time, right? But I remember I was fairly new here, and we had stumbled upon the next election, and I was getting quote unquote old enough to be really resolute in my determination of making sure that these kids were really buying into their citizenry and participating. And, I kept telling them, I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but I will tell you that you should vote. And I just remember a kid and I were sitting there talking. It was his first time he was going to get to vote for the president. And he was so burdened by this decision. Like, I agree on this perspective with this person and this candidate, but I agree with this person on this perspective. And what do I do? And by the grace of God and the presence of the Holy Spirit, I was able to utter the line that I've kind of stuck with, that I'm so grateful that as a believer in this country that I get to elect a president and be a part of that process, but that I serve the King of Kings at the end of the day. And it's why every time that someone asks me, like, hey, you're still at Valor? Oh, how much longer are you going to stay there? And I just say, until I leave education, because I've reached the point where I can't imagine talking about history and humans without being able to reference scripture in whatever ways we're using it, whether we're pointing out that people have fallen short of the glory of God or really pushed the limits into some very hard calling that they were being called to. So thanks, guys, for sharing.
Thank you.
We're going to finish with one last, I call it a fun question, but this is probably because I'm such a nerd. I can't even help it. I have this funny answer to if I could go back in history to a moment in time, I would really love to go back to that moment when Congressman Richard Nixon is questioning the actor, Ronald Reagan, during the HUAC hearings about his communist leanings, and if I could be a fly on the wall in the moment. In regards to 250 years, do you guys have a founder that you would love to sit down with? What would you ask them? I went a little more modern, but anything that you guys are thinking about for the founding?
Sure. Start. So for me, it would be John Adams. And what really strikes me with him is how, in such a volatile time in the country, he still did the harder right, and he upheld justice, in particular when he represented the British soldiers in the Boston Massacre. And that was extraordinarily important to him, value-wise, moral-wise, that they have a voice just like everyone else in the incident, regardless of the fact that he was a patriot and a founding father and all of this. And the question that I would ask him would be, what fears did you have for your family? We know that John Adams and Abigail Adams, were very close there. And of course they had, a bunch of children and things. And this is such a volatile time in our country. And sometimes I think that, we kind of take for granted, like, well, of course, there was a revolution and became a new country. This is a given. But absolutely, like to what you said, was not a given at the time. And if you were alive during that time, how risky an endeavor it would be to create something that new, to break away, huge emotions on both sides, violent actions towards each other on all sides. And how in that way do you have the bravery to break the status quo and stick your neck out when you know that's going to impact those not only yourself, but those that are closest to you. And because I know he is one of the founding fathers that has, that strong sense of family, and you have that, I'll protect them first and then my convictions second kind of way. It takes someone else to kind of break out and do that risky endeavor that he really did. So that would be my question.
One false move back then, and this story would have gone very differently.
Oh,
Very.
right.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
The reason it's a revolution, like an American gradual coming to be. Yeah.
Well, I even wonder sometimes if in the midst of it, I know they knew my life was at risk. I'm putting my family in the way. But sometimes too, I wonder, did they really know?
Yeah.
Like we now have 250 years of a magnifying glass where we can say, these were all of the things that they endured and looked to and battled and, but I don't know. And that's not to downplay anything that they did. It's incredible.
But it also makes you wonder too, when you think about yourself, like if this were to happen right now and I believed in this new vision, would I be brave enough or would I be secure and be, well, we'll see, or those guys are going to radically do this and I'm going to see how it goes.
Yeah. Let them test the waters. And
let them go first,
Comes
or
up.
would I be willing? Yeah.
I understand the fence, so there's a whole lot more as an adult.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
A whole lot more.
Jeff or Sarah?
I think mine would be Benjamin Rush. He's this kind of polymath doctor, devout Christian, interested in the education of women. And the question I think it occurs to me after, Courtney, what you're talking about is what is it like to act with the clear knowledge that your actions are going to be in history, right? Like we don't know what of ours, what ends up being historical or not. But a lot of these people, they knew they're making history, right? And what is it like to make to do those actions with that in mind, as opposed to just what a lot of history is, just people acting and not knowing that this will be significant later. So that's what I ask Benji. Yeah.
I'd like to listen to all these conversations.
Right.
Yeah, I do too. So mine's very much in character and in line with the lawyer. But I'd love to sit down with John Marshall.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So
Wow.
not the first Chief Justice, but the first one to make the job real. I like to tell students, nobody would take the job. So he ends up with 2 jobs at the same time when he is appointed Chief Justice. But he's the one who definitely makes the court what it is. He's second cousins with Thomas Jefferson, but they're on opposite sides politically. And he has this opportunity in Marbury versus Madison. And we know, because we're nerds, we know what happens is he creates the court really to be the third branch, truly, genuinely on equal footing with the other 2 branches. But I really want to go back and be like, all right, did you do that for political reasons? Like really?
Right.
Or was it genuine legal? Or did you just think that good old TJ was not going to follow your order if you ruled the other way? So
A little bit of beef over the family dinner table. Yeah.
And I would just love to sit down and ask him, did you know what you were doing? did you really know? Did you understand? Was it a genuine legal decision to go back and be like, hey, we have judicial review and we've got the authority to say what the law is and what the Constitution is, even though that's not in the Constitution. But it makes sense. Like, was that the reason, or was it this idea? Because I think enforcement of the court is such an interesting kind of modern day issue.
Absolutely.
Were you concerned about that in 1803? Were you concerned if you made another decision, if you ruled the other way, if you had ruled in Marbury's favor, and your good old cousin TJ kind of snubbed his nose at you and said, make me?
Yeah.
That again, the story would have gone totally differently. Like, was that part of your consideration, or is that simply our view on things nowadays, looking back and having the beauty of hindsight? And be like, oh, well, that would have been a problem then. And the least dangerous branch would have been the least significant branch, and it would have tumbled potentially out of existence, as opposed to it gets elevated with that. So I'd love to hear just
Yeah.
your musings.
Well, thank you guys for laughing and nerding out. I'm sure the conversations will continue in the core room and with our students. Best of luck to dual credit final exams and AP tests, and may the force be with you for the rest of the semester. I'm just so grateful for the way that you guys love on your students and the beauty that you bring to our craft because of all the different things that you're interested in. So thank you for loving our students well, and I'm excited to celebrate 250 of the United States and 150 as Colorado with you all. So
Thanks, Beth.
thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Cross in the Classroom, Educating with Eternal Values. We hope today's conversation inspired and encouraged you. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and stay connected with the Valor Christian High School community. Keep living out faith, learning with purpose, and growing in grace. Until next time.